I was 20 when all of this happened. I'm 27 now, but I still remember every detail like it just happened last week. Back then, I was working part-time in the cosmetics department of a drugstore. I was a student, so my shifts were almost always in the evenings. It wasn't exactly scary to work there at night. The store was in a pretty safe middle-class neighborhood, and there were always at least 4 employees in the building. Still, theft had been a growing issue. Even in nice areas, there's always someone trying to steal perfume or makeup, and our store was apparently an easy target. The company took it seriously, though. They hired a security team to monitor the store during the evenings, especially around cosmetics, since that's where most of the theft happened. That part of the store was tucked away, and usually only had 1 employee, almost always a woman. So having a security guard nearby actually felt comforting at first. I worked 4 evenings a week, and the other girl on the team covered the remaining ones. Our schedules rarely changed, and for a while, everything felt completely normal. There were a few different guards who rotated through, but most nights it was the same guy. I'll call him Mike. He looked to be in his mid-20s, friendly, not bad-looking, and honestly easy to talk to. He'd hang out near my counter, chat with me between customers, and keep an eye on things. I've always been kind of talkative. I don't have much of a filter and sometimes share too much about myself. So I didn't think twice about having normal conversations with him. After a few weeks, I noticed that every single one of my shifts had Mike assigned. I even asked him about it one night, kind of jokingly, and he laughed, saying, "Yeah, looks like you're stuck with me. Everyone else got other postings." I didn't question it. It sounded reasonable enough. Then, one of my nights off, I stopped by the store to grab something, and there was another guard on duty with my coworker, Sarah. I casually said hi to both of them, and mentioned something like, "Oh, I guess Mike's off tonight?" The other guard looked confused and said, "Mike only works Sunday through Wednesday." My stomach dropped. Those were my exact shifts. I remember standing there, smiling like it was nothing, but feeling something tighten in my chest. Still, I brushed it off. Coincidences happen, right? But then I started running into Mike outside of work, and it didn't feel like coincidence anymore. Once I saw him at the movie theater in my town. I knew he lived 20 minutes away, in a place that had its own theater showing the exact same movies. He just smiled and said, "What are the odds?" Another time, I picked up an extra shift, and he showed up halfway through in uniform, saying he was on break, and now filled his prescriptions at our store because he liked the staff better. When I asked the pharmacy tech later, she said he didn't have any prescriptions there. That's when I started to feel uneasy. Then came the night that completely changed how I saw him. Mike had just come back from a road trip with some friends and asked if I wanted to see photos from his trip. I said sure, it seemed harmless, and he handed me his phone saying, "Just keep swiping left." So I did. Scenery, group shots, more landscapes, and then, one swipe too far, a close-up photo of him naked. I froze for a second, handed the phone back, stuttering something like, "Oh, I think I went too far there." I expected him to be embarrassed, but he just smiled, this unsettling, deliberate smile, and said, "I was hoping you'd see that." My stomach turned. I immediately busied myself with something else, pretending to have work to do, and I avoided talking to him for the rest of the night. The next morning, I called his company. I tried to be diplomatic, said I thought maybe he liked me a bit too much, and that I felt uncomfortable. I didn't want to ruin his job or start drama. I just asked if they could maybe switch him to another location. I told myself I was overreacting, that maybe I'd given him the wrong idea somehow. The following night, I showed up and saw a new guard at the counter. I was relieved, genuinely grateful that they had listened. But when we locked up and walked to our cars, I heard an engine start in the far corner of the empty parking lot. I looked over and recognized the shape of the car immediately. Mike's. I had seen him park there dozens of times. My pulse quickened. The car idled for a few seconds, then drove off. When I got to my car, I found a note under my wiper. It said, "I'm so sad they moved me. I'll try to come back soon. Let's get together. It had his phone number written at the bottom. I remember sitting there, gripping the steering wheel, feeling my stomach twist. The next morning, I called his supervisor again, told him everything this time. My store manager got involved too, an older guy, very protective. When he heard the story, he said, "Hell no," and immediately contacted the security company, telling them Mike wasn't allowed near the property again. For a few weeks, everything was quiet. I didn't tell my boyfriend right away. The relationship was still new, and I didn't want to make him worry. Then one rainy evening, while I was setting up a new display, I saw him again. The windows reflected the inside of the store more than the outside, but when a car honked, I instinctively looked up. And in that faint reflection, I saw Mike standing directly behind me, just standing there, watching me. I jumped, probably gasped out loud, then quickly walked to the other end of the store where my manager was. He sprinted back to check, but by the time he got there, Mike was gone. We later confirmed it on the cameras. He had just walked up, stood there for a minute, then left. When my manager called the security company again, they said Mike had quit the week before. I wanted to believe that was the end of it. But one Sunday night, I had to drive myself home for the first time in weeks. My parents were out of town and my boyfriend had other plans. After closing, I said goodbye to my coworkers and headed to my car, which was parked near the river at the edge of the lot, the darkest spot you could possibly choose. As I got closer, I heard someone speaking softly. My heart stopped when I recognized the voice. It was Mike. His tone was angry, almost desperate. "Why would you do this to me? Why would you make me believe you wanted me?" Thankfully, the pharmacist who had closed with me hadn't left yet. He was tossing garbage behind the building. I shouted, "Jim, wait up," and ran to him, nearly tripping. I just blurted out, "Call 911. The police showed up within minutes, but Mike was gone. Just gone. I never saw him again after that night. Sometimes I still wonder what would have happened if the pharmacist hadn't been there. This happened just a couple of weeks ago, and honestly, I've been going back and forth about whether to even talk about it. At first, I convinced myself I was overreacting, that it was probably nothing. But the more I think about it, the less sure I am. I work in this small corporate complex made up of a bunch of one-story offices, maybe 9 or 10 total. During the day, it's busy enough that you never really feel alone. But on my side of the building, there's this patch of thick woods that runs behind the parking lot, and once it gets dark, the whole place takes on this weirdly empty, isolated feeling. You can see a few houses through the trees if you look closely, but there aren't any streetlights nearby, so after 7 or 8, it's just shadows and silence. By the time most people leave, only a few cars are left, and mine is usually one of them. I'm 25, about 5'3", and I work alone until around 1 in the morning. So yeah, even though I try to act tough, being the last one there can get unnerving sometimes. That night started like any other. I went out to my car on break to grab some food, then realized I'd left my phone plugged in under my desk. I headed back inside, and as I passed by the security monitor at the front desk, I noticed a truck pulling into the lot. It parked way down on the far end, near the tree line. I remember thinking, who's coming in at 9 o'clock at night? But brushed it off, figuring someone must have forgotten something inside. I grabbed my phone, chatted for a minute with one of my coworkers, used the restroom, and when I came back out, the truck was gone. I didn't think much of it after that. I picked up food, parked farther down the lot to eat before heading back in, and started scrolling on my phone. That's when I noticed headlights flicker on from the corner of the lot, the same corner where that truck had been earlier. It started rolling toward me, slow at first. I kept pretending to look at my phone while watching out of the corner of my eye. The truck pulled up right next to me, so close I wouldn't have been able to open my door without scraping his. My heart started pounding. The door on his side opened, and the interior light clicked on. I could see him clearly now. A huge guy, probably over 6 feet tall, easily 300 pounds, wearing dark clothes. He lifted a hand like he wanted me to stop or roll my window down. Instead, I threw my car into reverse so fast my tires screeched. The second I moved, he jogged around toward my side, and all I could think about was how easy it would have been for him to grab me. I didn't wait to find out what he wanted. I just floored it out of there. I checked my mirrors and saw him getting back into his truck, but I didn't know if he was following me. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely keep a grip on the wheel. I wasn't super familiar with the area outside of the highway that led to the office, so I took a quick right into a residential neighborhood, figuring I could lose him if he tried to follow. After a few turns, I realized he wasn't behind me anymore. I parked a couple blocks away, pulled out my phone, and called my mom. No answer. Then I called one of my coworkers who worked the same shift and told her everything. She sounded calm and said maybe I was overreacting, that the guy probably just wanted to say something. She told me to call her when I got back, and she'd walk me inside since I was so shaken up. I eventually started driving back toward the building, trying to convince myself I was being paranoid. But when I pulled in, I saw that same truck again, parked on the other side of the lot, half hidden behind another car. The lights were off, but I knew it was him. My stomach dropped. I sat in my car for maybe 15 minutes, trying to rationalize it all, telling myself nothing had actually happened. Finally, I called my coworker and told her I was coming in. She met me at the door and said he had stopped by while I was gone. Apparently, he'd banged on the door and claimed he was hired security. He told her kids had been breaking bottles in the parking lot, and that he saw her friend, meaning me. She said she didn't want to open the door, but he kind of pulled it open when she cracked it, handed her this cheap business card, and then left after she told him off for scaring women that late at night. When she showed me the card, I remember this weird, sinking feeling. The logo looked fake, like something printed off at home, and the company name didn't ring a bell. But what really got to me was the fact that he knew exactly which office I worked in. There's no way to tell from the outside which ones are occupied at night, because all the lobby lights stay on for the cameras. My car wasn't even parked right in front. If he really was a security guard, how would he have known that I was the one inside? And if he was just checking on things, why show up, hang around for 15 minutes, and then disappear the second someone else confronted him? The next morning, we told our boss everything. He contacted the property owner, who confirmed that they had, in fact, hired a security company, but not the one listed on the card. Their guards only worked weekends. This had all happened on a Wednesday night. I don't know who that man was or what he wanted, but I'm glad I didn't find out. I haven't seen that truck again since, but every time I work late now, I can't help glancing out into the lot, half expecting to see those headlights turn on again. Earlier this year, I decided to take my family on a short caravan holiday before heading off to Greece for work. I've done seasonal work there before and was leaving for 5 months, so this trip was meant to be a relaxed, cheap getaway, just a week of simple family time before things got hectic again. The first few days went exactly as planned. We played bingo in the evenings, celebrated Wales winning the Grand Slam in rugby, drank too much, laughed a lot. The kind of easy family week you almost don't get as an adult anymore. On Monday night, during bingo at the clubhouse, I noticed one of the on-site security guys. He caught my eye because he looked the type I usually found attractive. Beard, glasses, sort of a calm demeanor. I even joked to my mom about it, and she laughed it off. Later that night, he came over to our table, introducing himself and chatting with all of us about general stuff. The park, his job, the usual small talk. He seemed confident and friendly, nothing weird about it at first. But he lingered near our table a lot, hovering between conversations, keeping eye contact with me a bit too long. I just chalked it up to awkwardness, or maybe my own nerves. When we left, he was standing by the exit and said something like, "Don't go yet. I've got 2 days off. Won't get to see you." It struck me as odd because we'd only exchanged small talk, but I didn't think too deeply about it. My mom thought I liked him and intentionally left me behind for a second to chat, but I wasn't comfortable being alone with him. I just smiled, said goodnight, and hurried off, feeling his eyes on me as I crossed the car park. 2 days passed without seeing him, and I'd mostly forgotten about the whole thing until Wednesday when he came back on shift. He noticed us straight away and walked right over, winked, and leaned in close beside me while talking, his elbows resting on our table. His face was way too close to mine. I excused myself, saying I wanted to play with my nephew in the arcade. From where I stood at the bowling machine, I caught sight of him watching me through one of the game cabinets, just standing there, staring. That familiar knot of anxiety hit me hard. I went back to sit with my parents, and he started passing by every few minutes, glancing over each time. I waited until he disappeared from view, then told my parents I wasn't feeling great, and walked back to the caravan early. When my parents got back later that night, they told me he'd kept stopping by the table asking where I'd gone, if I was okay, and if he needed to check up on me. He even handed my mom a piece of paper with his number on it, asking her to give it to me. I was mortified. Who tries to flirt through someone's mum? I joked about it, but honestly, it made my skin crawl. Thursday was our last day, and I decided not to go out at all. I stayed in the caravan, packed up our stuff, and babysat my nephew while my parents went for a walk. I just wanted to avoid the guy. That night, everything got truly disturbing. Somehow he got my phone number. Around midnight, I started getting WhatsApp messages from an unknown number. It was him. At first, I tried being polite, thinking maybe he got my number from park records or something. I mentioned packing and heading home the next day, but his replies quickly turned flirty and inappropriate. I put my phone face down and tried to ignore it. Sometime after 3 a.m., I woke up to a sound outside my window. Soft rustling and faint footsteps. I froze, holding my breath. My mom had left her curtain wide open, and the living room light cast just enough glow for me to see through a small gap in mine. He was standing there, the same security guy, just outside my window, scanning around like he was looking for me. My heart was pounding so loud I thought he'd hear it. I didn't move, didn't breathe, just stared. My phone screen lit up again and again with WhatsApp notifications. I didn't dare unlock it, but I could read part of the messages from the preview. Things like, "I know where you are," and "come to the window." He sent pictures of himself naked, said disgusting things about what he wanted me to do, and kept calling non-stop. I laid there frozen for what felt like hours. Eventually, exhaustion must have taken over, because the next thing I remember is my mom waking me around 9 a.m., saying she'd just opened the living room curtains and saw him outside. He had been there the entire night. By the time we finished packing up to leave, he was gone. I didn't tell my parents what had really happened, about the messages, the calls, or him standing by my window for hours. They thought it was weird but didn't understand why I looked like I was about to be sick. I ran to the car with my hood up, terrified he was watching, that he knew our number plate, that he could track me somehow. Even now, I can't wrap my head around how he got my number or knew which caravan we were in. I've never felt so invaded in my life. I didn't tell the police, didn't tell anyone. I just left and tried to move on. But every time I think about that night, about him standing outside for hours waiting, I get that same cold, sick feeling all over again. I'd been counting down to my senior trip for years. 10 days away from home, no parents, just friends and freedom. The trip turned out great for the most part, but one person made me really uncomfortable: the hotel's security guard. He was assigned to our wing, and the first time we met, he seemed friendly. We chatted a little, and he told me to guess his age. I said 45, and he laughed, saying he was 30. We joked about it and went our separate ways. The next night, I went out clubbing with my friends. Around 2 a.m., I felt sick from something I'd had to drink and decided to head back early. He was at the lobby and noticed I didn't look well. He offered to walk me to my room, and since it didn't seem weird at the time, I said sure. He walked with me, said goodnight, and left. Nothing strange about that, at least not yet. The next day he asked how old I was. I teased him and said 16, and he smirked, saying he didn't believe me. He later asked one of the travel staff, who told him I was 18. Then he said, "Oh, so you're legal. Nice." That made my stomach drop. I brushed it off, but after that, his attitude completely changed. That night, he asked if I was a virgin. I told him it was none of his business, and he laughed like it was a joke. From then on, every time I saw him, he blew me kisses, or did weird little gestures like putting his hand over his heart, or making kissy faces when no one was around. I started avoiding him. A few nights later, I was waiting by the elevator with some friends when he came up, put his arm around my shoulders, and asked if I had a boyfriend. He said things like, "You're going to be naughty on this trip, right? I won't kiss and tell." My friends looked uncomfortable, and I just froze until the elevator finally came. The second to last night, I was heading out with friends when I realized I forgot my phone upstairs. I told them to wait and went back alone. The hallway was completely empty, quiet except for the faint echo of music from downstairs. When I turned the corner, he was there, standing right outside my room like he'd been waiting. He smiled and said something about how quiet it was. I mumbled an excuse and went straight back downstairs, pretending I couldn't find my phone. I didn't tell anyone why. On the last day, he came up to my friends and said how sad he was that he never got to be with me, that he waited for me and could have shown me a good time. I laughed it off to keep things from being awkward, but inside, I felt sick. I was just relieved the trip was ending. That trip was supposed to be one of the best memories of my school years, and while most of it was, I still think about how uncomfortable that man made me feel. I never said anything to the travel staff. I just wanted to go home and forget it ever happened. I moved into a big studio apartment complex a few months ago with my 2-year-old daughter. It's a decent place, quiet enough, with an enclosed patio that's open on one side like a doorway. No gate or door, just a gap leading out to the courtyard. About 3 weeks ago, my sister came over with a few of her friends. We were sitting outside on the patio drinking some beers, playing Cards Against Humanity, and keeping the music low since my daughter was asleep inside. We were laughing and having a good time when the security guard suddenly walked into my patio. I asked, "Hey, are we being too loud? Did someone complain?" He smiled and said, "No, you're fine, just doing my rounds." He hung around a little longer than necessary, making small talk before walking off. None of us thought much about it and went back to our game. About 25 minutes later, after most of the group had gone home, he came back. Only my sister, her friend Cody, and I were still there. He was an older guy, maybe late 40s or early 50s, kind of heavy-set with glasses. This time he came right up and started chatting again. He told us about how he used to be a cop but had to retire after a heart attack, and how he'd gone through a quintuple bypass before taking this security job. I felt bad for him. He seemed lonely, so I listened and tried to be polite. But he stayed for at least half an hour. My sister started to get uneasy and finally said loudly, "All right, we're heading to bed." He said goodnight and left. As soon as he was gone, my sister told me she didn't like the way he was looking at me, that it felt off, like he'd taken an interest. I told her she was probably overthinking it. About a week later, she came over again. We were sitting inside talking, and I had the front door open with just the screen door locked so some air could come in. I got that weird feeling that someone was watching me, so I looked up, and there he was again. He was standing at the edge of the patio, just staring in. I said hi, and he stepped forward a bit, almost like he expected me to invite him in. I looked away, pretending not to notice, and when I looked back, he was gone. A few days after that, I got home late from work, took a shower, and threw on my red silk robe. I was washing dishes and sipping wine, not paying much attention to anything. When I turned toward the couch, I nearly screamed. The security guard was standing right outside my screen door, staring through the crack where the wood door was open. He didn't even flinch when I jumped. I stammered, "You scared me." No apology, no expression, just, I was doing my rounds. I told him I was heading to bed, but he didn't move. He looked around my patio and said, "You should put your bike inside. Someone could take it." "Yeah, I'll get to it," I said quickly, and slammed the door shut. I locked everything, sat down, and tried to calm myself. My heart was racing. I didn't know if he was just awkward or if something was seriously wrong with this man. My sister and friends told me to report it, and after thinking about it overnight, I did. The property manager took my statement over the phone and didn't seem surprised, which made me wonder if there had been other complaints. 2 days later, they called back to tell me he'd been fired. They told me to call the police if I ever saw him again. It's been quiet since then, but every night when I lock my door, I still think about how close he was, just a few feet away, staring through that crack like he belonged there. The building I used to work in had 2 security guards. One was this sweet old man who'd chat with everyone, and the other was a guy around my age, early 20s, quiet, polite. And at first, I thought harmless. We talked a little here and there, and after a while he asked me out to dinner. I didn't see the harm in it. I was moving out of the country soon, so there was no chance of anything serious happening. I figured, why not? One dinner before I go. My first mistake was giving him my address so he could pick me up. I told a few coworkers about it just in case, but I honestly didn't think twice. He was a security guard, someone I saw every day at work. What was the worst that could happen? He showed up right on time, holding 24 red roses. He said he bought a new suit for the date and even got his car detailed. It was intense. I thanked him but stepped inside for a moment, pretending I forgot something, mostly so I wouldn't have to invite him in to put the flowers in water. We went to this really nice restaurant, way fancier than I expected. We hadn't even ordered drinks yet when he hit me with, "I've never kissed anyone before. You're my first date ever." I froze. I had no idea what to say. He just smiled nervously, waiting for me to say something, but all I could think was, oh no. The rest of dinner was painfully awkward. I tried to be nice, asking him about work and hobbies, but every answer was short, and every silence dragged. When he dropped me off, he went in for what I thought was a hug, and instead shoved his tongue in my mouth. It was fast, clumsy, and completely unexpected. I wiped it off, mumbled something polite, and went inside. As uncomfortable as it was, I figured I'd just let it fade out. I was leaving the country anyway. No big deal, right? Except it didn't fade. He started calling the next morning, over and over. I ignored him, thinking he'd take the hint. But the calls kept coming all weekend, his messages shifting from nervous to angry. By Sunday night, there were over a dozen voicemails waiting, some of them accusing me of leading him on. When I got to work Monday morning, there was a handwritten letter sitting on my desk. It said he'd driven by my apartment over the weekend and saw my car wasn't there. He wrote that he missed me and wanted to know where I'd gone. Then he listed other things, what time I left for work, when I usually came home, little details that proved he'd been keeping tabs on me for weeks. That was when it really sank in that something wasn't right. I avoided him as much as possible, but he started showing up outside of work, just standing near places I'd go. I didn't confront him. I just gave notice early and moved out before my transfer overseas. I thought that would be the end of it. But not even a month after settling into my new place abroad, I started getting messages from random accounts. They all sounded familiar, the same tone, the same weird phrasing he used. He'd somehow found me online, even though I used a different name. Then he started following my friends' profiles, leaving cryptic comments, trying to get their attention. I blocked every account I could, but he'd just make new ones. To this day, I have no idea how he kept finding me, but I know one thing. He's not harmless, not even close.